Habs insider Arpon Basu said that, quote, he would do anything to make signing William Nylander happen if he was running the Habs. We'll break down that possibility for next offseason. Plus, we're going to get into the strengths and weaknesses of the Habs prospect system. And finally, an awesome little note on Alex Newhook, who is super excited to join the organization. So stick around for this edition of Habs Digest. The first thing, this is the big thing, right? Could the Habs go after William Nylander? Now, this might seem like sacrilege to a lot of you guys, right? Like, William Nylander as a Hab? No, there is just absolutely no way. No one wants him. He's a Toronto Maple Leaf. But I don't know about that, right? And Arpon Basu also is like, I don't know, because he's a really good player, whether you like him or not. In a recent mailbag talking about Juraj Slafkovsky, he said that Nylander will cost at least $10 million a year on a long-term deal, one that would take him into his mid-30s. There's definite risk there, but players like him rarely make it to market. I'm not willing to predict the Canadiens will sign him, but again, quote, if I were running things, I would do everything I could to make it happen. So, William Nylander, obviously, Toronto Maple Leafs player, very good. Let's take a look at his stats. Last season put up his first 40-goal season. 40 goals, 47 assists for 87 points in 82 games. The seasons before, 80 and 81, 42 and 51, 59 and 68. Since he's been a full-time NHLer, he has basically always been a point per game and a near, 30-goal kind of guy. And Harpon's right, William Nylander's 27 years old. He just turned 27 a couple months ago. And he's going to be looking for a long-term deal that's probably going to pay him $10 million because he has a 40-goal scoring potential. But he's 6', 204. And Habs fans, we know William Nylander is a force of a player because it seems like every time the Habs play the Leafs, William Nylander is the one scoring against the Montreal Canadiens. Doesn't it feel like every single game he's doing it? He was basically the only Leaf that showed up in the Habs-Leafs playoff series back in 2021. So, hey, you take William Nylander away from the Leafs, you bring him to the Habs, that's one Hab killer that's gone from the rest of the Atlantic Division. But on a more serious note, how would William Nylander fit in the Habs organization? Well, if the Habs were able to clear up $10 million per year in cap room, that wouldn't exactly be easy. You have to think that you're going to have some of your younger guys still on their very young deals, right? But also, you might have to do something with Brendan Gallagher's contract, which is $6.5 million. Mike Hoffman, he's going to be off the books at the end of this year. Yoel Armia, you think he would have to be gone at over $3 million per year, and he will be going into the season after, so he's also an issue. So, making the money work might be a little difficult, but with the extensions of Alex Newhook, Kirby, Dach on a decent contract, and the extensions of Caufield and Suzuki, the Habs do have a little bit of room to play with. And it makes it a little bit easier too because of all the young players they have, right? Something like this is not possible if you have a lot of veteran guys who are making maybe $3-4 million a year, as opposed to these young guys making less than $1 million in a lot of cases. Guys like Cayden, Guhle, guys like Juraj Slafkovsky, Jordan Harris, eventually someone like Lane Hudson, Logan Mailloux. We're going to get into a lot of those guys in the next segment. But if the Habs have the money, I also think it's not a terrible idea, depending on the term. Because, again, he's 27, and many stats show, people seem to think the players' peaks is 28, 29, 30. Really, it's not. For forwards, their peak is really around 25 to 27. So what's going to happen is you're going to end up paying William Nylander. He's probably going to want 6-7 years at $10 million per year. You're going to bring him into his mid-30s. He's almost certainly going to hit a decline. But if the Habs can sneak in a deal for a shorter-term deal that kind of lines up with their development of Suzuki, Caufield, and some of the young guys, it could make some sense. Again, it's a hefty price tag. The Leafs are a rival organization. It would kind of feel good to steal one of their players, one of their better players away from them. But at the same time, let's be real at the end of the day, I think that Nylander's probably going to sign an extension in Toronto if they can make that happen at all. Regardless, the prospect of him being a Montreal Canadien is not as crazy to me as I once thought. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are going to disagree with that, but let me know down in the comments down below, because this whole situation it's fluid, it's very interesting, but a 40-goal scorer doesn't just come up for free very often, right, without having to give up some of your own players. So, who knows? We'll have to see what Kent Hughes is up to next offseason. Topic 2 today, I want to get into some strengths and weaknesses of the Habs Prospect Pool. This was an article posted by the Hockey News today, and they kind of dive into the Habs Prospect Pool. They do a very big deep dive, and if you're interested in that, I'd suggest going to take a look at it. But what I wanted to highlight are the strengths and weaknesses that they gave for the Habs prospect system and kind of give my notes on it. So let's talk about the strengths first. They say the depth all over the lineup is a major, major strength. Of course, Hudson's the star of the show. He manipulates, embarrasses people. Creativity, the same as Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. They say Reinbacher's a big mobile blue liner, and they have a lot of underrated guys like Norlinder, Struble, Engstrom. Mailloux maybe not so much. But they have a bunch of prospects with legitimate paths to the NHL. And this is something that not every team has, right? Teams oftentimes, at least we see it maybe more often than not, they try to draft for star power as opposed to guys that will be very, very solid, but that really hasn't been the Habs' MO. Has that paid off? Well, we'll have to see, right? Because a lot of the Habs picks are guys that project to be very, very solid NHLer. Like Nick Suzuki is amazing. He's probably going to end up peaking at a first-line center, which is about as good as you can get. But superstar? I'm not so sure, right? I mean, he very well could be. Cole Caufield, I think, is much closer to a superstar. But someone like Cayden Guhle doesn't really project to be a superstar as much as a very solid left D. David Reinbacher, very solid right D. The only guy that they really have that has that superstar kind of potential is Lane Hutson right now, while all these other guys like Owen Beck, Philip Méchard, even someone like Juraj Slafkovsky, they project to be very solid NHLers, and Joshua Watt too, also probably more so than Méchard. But superstar? Not necessarily. So while the Habs don't have that star potential, they really, really do have. I mean, we actually showed a ranking just a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, about the Habs prospect system, how they ranked number 2, I think, in the entire NHL. And they were number 1 in NHL depth, as in projected prospects that would make the NHL at some point. But they were far behind in top-end prospects, and that's where the weaknesses come in. Montreal found a mix of players at various positions in the past few years, but aside from Hutson, there's no one really on the highlight reel all the time. We have hopes for Slafkovsky. It's still very possible. He has good top speed, but he could learn to skate a bit better, and Hudson's not the best on defense. They have someone like Mailloux, who could end up being a solid goal scorer on D, but again, Montreal must find a way to take a big swing at the draft next year to find a top-of-the-lineup game breaker that can compete in the loaded Atlantic Division. Now, it's kind of funny seeing that because that's exactly what we heard this year, and that's exactly why a lot of fans wanted to draft Matvei Michkov, but that didn't happen, right? He does have that game breaker potential. He is that game breaker, really, but the Habs didn't want to take that risk. They wanted to go more solid than someone like David Reinbacher. Now, again, you look at Stanley Cup winning teams, you don't have to have a ton of superstars. I mean, just look at Vegas this year. Yes, someone like Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, they are elite of the elite, really. But at the same time, their team succeeded based on depth, right? Neither of them won the Conn Smythe, did they? So having that depth is very important for a team, but at the same time, you can't necessarily get that far without anyone who's on that top-end level, right? Even like a Jack Eichel is better than anyone on the Habs right now. So it's kind of a give and take, right? You have so much depth, but you don't have that guy at the top. Very, very interesting strengths and weaknesses for the Habs prospect system, but regardless, with the sheer amount of good prospects they have, you gotta think that someone's eventually gonna pan out. Maybe they take a big swing next year after probably another season at the bottom of the Atlantic, and maybe in a couple years we'll have that star right in our hand. Final thing for the video today, just a little note on Alex Newhook. I mean, my new favorite Hab. I mean, of course, me being from Newfoundland, no longer living there, living in Quebec City now, but yeah, Alex Newhook, pride of St. John's, Newfoundland. Very, very happy to be a Hab. Oops, sorry, I had that there. But Alex Newhook, he had a little segment on the NHLPA thing earlier, and yeah, he said he can't wait for the big moments. There are 2 particular games that he's looking forward to once the puck drops in the season. Quote, it's hard to put in words how special it'll be to wear that jersey for the first time in a regular season game, and he's going to do that on October 11th in Toronto. You try to imagine what it will feel like, but I think it'll be even better than what you expect. Of course, he came over from Colorado on June 27th. He'll get his first opportunity to wear the colors of his new team on October 14th, as in the Bleu, Blanc et Rouge, but mainly the Rouge at home versus the Blackhawks. He said it's a pretty cool feeling when you think of it. I know those will be big moments for me. Now, Alex Newhook, by all accounts, has just been awesome since he came over. He took over the Habs, I think, Instagram, or no, maybe it was Twitter page the other day, sending out some tweets. Stanley Cup pedigree. I mean, we talk a bit about Alex Newhook, but how cool of a dude he is, really, it goes pretty far, especially when you have a locker room like Nick Suzuki, Cole Caufield. These kind of guys, the locker room environment's really chill. Newhook seems like a down-to-earth guy. He's really excited to play for a team, and that's something that Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton, Marty St. Louis have really, really looked for in their future projects, I guess, or really just anyone who wants to play for the team. They really want to play for Montreal, and Alex Newhook defines that. So really, really excited to see him and the Habs get started in just a couple of months. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. As always, help us at 7,000 subs. And if you're still watching at this point in the video, we're almost 10 minutes in, leave a comment saying you watched till the end, because it's always fun to see which of you guys watched all the way to the end of these videos, and we really appreciate every single one of you. I'm Josh Gosse. Catch you in the next one.